Ladies and gentlemen, it was October 21st when the U.S. government presented a draft resolution to the United Nations Security Council, affirming Israel's right to self-defense and urging Iran to halt weapons supply to the Hamas movement. The new draft resolution implores the United Nations to safeguard civilians, particularly those attempting to relocate to safer areas. Concurrently, the U.S. emphasizes the necessity for nations to comply with international law when reacting to acts of terrorism, and advocates for sustained aid to the Gaza Strip. Surprisingly, the U.S. draft does not advocate for any ceasefire, but instead encourages all nations to prevent the violence in Gaza from escalating region-wide. The timeline of when this possible resolution might be voted on and passed remains unclear. A minimum of 9 votes in favor is obligatory, with no vetoes from Russia, China, the U.S., France, or the UK. This resolution follows the veto by the U.S. of a text by Brazil on October 16th geared towards allowing humanitarian aid into Gaza. Linda Thomas-Greenfield, U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, defended this resolution on October 16th, suggesting that the Security Council required additional time for diplomatic efforts on the ground as the U.S. leadership was focused on aiding Gaza and securing the release of hostages held by Hamas since the onset of the conflict on October 10th. Worryingly, there has been one Israeli casualty, over 4,600 wounded, while the Palestinian death toll in Gaza has reached close to 4,400 and approximately 13,560 people have been wounded, according to the United Nations reports. To date, over 1 million people have been displaced. On October 21st, an international summit was convened in Cairo, Egypt, to deliberate on how to de-escalate the ongoing conflict between Hamas and Israel, mitigate the risk of a region-wide escalation, and seek resolutions to the age-old conflict between Israel and the Palestinians. Leaders from approximately 30 Arab and Western countries attended the summit, named the Cairo Peace Summit, which was organized by Egypt. This included the President of the State of Palestine, the King of Jordan, the Emir of Qatar, and the Prime Ministers of Italy, Spain, Greece, and Canada. As the conference commenced, UN Secretary-General Guterres advocated for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza and international action to bring an end to this terrifying ordeal. Just before the conference began, the first trucks with relief aid crossed the Rafah border from Egypt into Gaza. The Israeli military specified that the humanitarian aid would only be delivered to the southern area of Gaza, where Palestinian civilians have been asked to evacuate due to safety concerns amid the conflict. Concerning the ongoing turmoil in Gaza, we find ourselves on the 13th day of substantial aerial hostilities, with Israel gearing up for a ground assault aimed at Hamas. Benny Gantz, the defense minister of Israel, has shed light on the nation's military and political strategies concerning Gaza. These strategies encompass airstrikes as the preliminary tactic, followed by ground operations with the aim to neutralize terroristic elements and dismantle Hamas's infrastructure. As a consequence, a fresh security entity will be instituted to safeguard Israeli citizens, negating the necessity for a constant military presence to oversee the day-to-day activities of Gaza's 2.3 million residents. In 2005, in accordance with the Oslo Peace Accords that were signed with the Palestinian Liberation Organization, then Prime Minister Ariel Sharon recalled 8,000 settlers and troops from Gaza, which had been under Israel's control since the 1967 Six-Day War with Egypt. The accord gave birth to the Palestinian Authority, facilitating limited self-governance in certain regions of the West Bank and Gaza. The Palestinian Liberation Organization was tasked with recognizing Israel and restraining armed Palestinian factions, though it fell short of establishing a Palestinian state. On October 20th, Benny Gantz, Israeli defense minister, stated that Israel is presently in the initial stage of a military campaign, which involves airstrikes, and will transition to ground operations to neutralize terrorist elements and dismantle Hamas's infrastructure. He emphasized that it is a gradual process, and the new security entity won't spring up overnight. Terms of the Strip's administration, Gantz held back from specifying when Gaza's management would be handed over to the international community. Despite Israel's withdrawal of settlers and military in 2005, Gaza remains a militarily occupied area under Israel due to the fact that Gaza's air and naval territories are still under Israeli control. However, Israel disputes this claim, stating that it no longer maintains a military presence or settlements in Gaza, and that the Palestinian Authority oversees Gaza's administrative and security concerns. Ever since 2007, when Hamas ousted forces loyal to the rival Fatah faction and seized control of Gaza, the Palestinian Authority ceased to govern Gaza. In the preceding year, Hamas had secured victory in the general elections, but its government was not recognized internationally since they declined to acknowledge Israel and renounce violence. As per records released by the Israeli and U.S. governments, the two women who were released are Judith Raanan and her daughter Natalie. These women represented Israeli families of individuals who had either gone missing or been kidnapped and hailed the news, calling upon Arab leaders to act urgently to secure the release of those still held captive. This information was further corroborated by Abu Obaid, spokesperson for the Izz ad-Din al-Qassam brigades, which is Hamas's armed wing. The Israeli Prime Minister's office also confirmed this information. Obaid rationalized this decision as being driven by humanitarian concerns with the intent of disproving the accusations leveled by U.S. President Joe Biden and his administration. On his visit to Israel on October 15th, the U.S. leader had condemned Hamas for its brutalities, which had resulted in 1,400 deaths and over 200 kidnappings during a sudden raid on Israel on October 10th. Thus far, Israel has reported one fatality and over 4,600 people injured. On the other hand, close to 4,400 Palestinians in Gaza have lost their lives, with around 13,000 injured, as per statistics provided by the Israeli and U.S. governments. We have faith in you and hope that you persist in your training while time permits. We wish you luck and assure you that you will soon witness Gaza from within. During an address to the Foreign Affairs and Defense Committee of the Knesset alongside committee members, Benny Gantz, Israeli Defense Minister, said that the second phase will include low-intensity operations targeted at eradicating resistance pockets, implying that Israeli forces will remain deployed on the ground to eliminate Hamas forces. We respond and eliminate Hamas, and we will leave no stone unturned to bring our hostages and their loved ones back home. The final stage will see Israel passing on the responsibility for the day-to-day life of Gaza's population and creating a new security landscape for the people of Israel. Gallant didn't reveal who would take over the Strip's administration and suggested keeping thousands of individuals in the Negev desert as leverage to negotiate the release of over 200 hostages. On October 20th, official figures from the Gaza Health Ministry indicated that the airstrikes have caused 4,137 deaths and over 13,000 injuries. We have faith and trust in you. We urge you to carry on with your training while there's still time. Best of luck, and now, farewell. We eagerly await